So I am back with another birth story. This is birth number 2 within 13 months. Wow. Baby girl is over there sleeping right now, so try to make this quicker than the last one. So we had our first son on Thanksgiving Day of 2020, and we found out when he had just turned 5 months old that I was pregnant again. Needless to say, well, I don't know if it's needless to say, we were caught off guard. We were surprised. We were not excited because we had just had a child. In fact, turns out I was pregnant 4 months into his life, but we found out when he was 5 months. So we had a 5-month-old. We were finally getting kind of a rhythm, and to find out we were pregnant again, that was a blow. So actually we ended up not even sharing it with anyone but people in our actual physical real life. We didn't put it on social media. We didn't do any of that because we weren't excited, and for me personally, I didn't want to draw that type of attention to myself whenever I wasn't actually excited about it. You know, the congratulations and oh, I'm so happy for you, like I wasn't feeling that way. And so I didn't even want to invite that type of attention into my sphere because I just couldn't handle it. It took me pretty much the whole pregnancy to come to terms with the pregnancy, which is weird, but that's just the truth. That's just the transparent truth. So anyways, yes. So what's funny is we found out about my son, that we were pregnant with him March 27th of 2020. We found out that we were pregnant with our daughter April 27th of 2020. Her due date was actually a month and a year after his, 12/26/2021. But we ended up having her on December 23rd, 2021. So the pregnancy itself, seamless, smooth. Honestly, if I wasn't growing a belly and I didn't see her inside of me on the ultrasound, I wouldn't know that I was pregnant. I think I may have felt slightly nauseous a couple times, but I didn't have morning sickness. I didn't have any real food aversions, although salmon, again, this time I couldn't really do salmon. But yeah, the pregnancy was smooth. There were a couple concerns not early on, maybe like halfway through, that she didn't seem to be growing quite right. But then like she randomly had a growth spurt and was basically at the same stage as her brother gestationally. And so, you know, that concern went away. But my last obstetrician appointment before her due date, I didn't have an ultrasound. I thought I had an ultrasound that day, but I didn't. Well, it was just a, regular check. She measured my belly, asked me how things were going, pretty standard stuff. I didn't have an ultrasound scheduled because, okay, so my last pregnancy, I didn't really do a whole bunch of ultrasounds. So I was like, it's not really necessary. But for this one, because her growth was a concern, they scheduled one pretty much every time I went. So December 22nd, my appointment was at like 2:30. So me and my husband went. It just so happened that we were both available because his work schedule was different this time. So he wasn't able to go to every appointment with me like he was the first time. And so he just so happened to go with me to this appointment. So, we had finally got our bags packed. I don't know if it's everyone, but with your second kid, it just be like, you know what, Lord, you got this. Like, we weren't as, I don't want to say diligent, but we weren't as anxious or nervous or anal about like every single thing with this one. But so we finally had gotten our bags packed, and we were like, just in case, she comes early or whatever, like we just want to be ready. So did we take our bags to the appointment? I don't remember if we took our bags to the appointment, but we had them packed. So we go to the appointment. Standard procedure, go to my ultrasound, and the ultrasound techs are not allowed to interpret the ultrasound. They just let the doctor do that. So we did our ultrasound. She looked and sounded great. We had no reason to be concerned about anything. So we go to the doctor appointment, and we definitely should have been concerned. Which we wouldn't have known because we don't know how to read ultrasounds, sonograms, whatever you want to call them. So anyways, a doctor comes in, great doctor. She was my OB last time. She says that I need to be induced. And I'm like, huh? Why? because I'm not used to none of this. You know, my first pregnancy, other than the dog going passing out after I delivered him, everything was fine, everything. So not only was I unprepared for this news, but I was unfamiliar with the reasons why. So as I said before, there were concerns about my daughter's growth. And the last ultrasound that I had, she had the growth spurt. So every other ultrasound past that, we had no reason to be concerned. So she says that she has intrauterine growth restriction, and basically meaning that her growth is not happening as it should because she's not getting everything she needs from the placenta. And she also said something about how my placenta was aged, like my placenta was more like a 43-week placenta rather than a 39-week, which is what I was. I was 39 weeks and 3 days at that time. So she said, you know, we need to get you to the hospital. She said it's not anything that you need to rush to the hospital right now, but you need to call the hospital at like 6 o'clock. You need to let them know that you've been scheduled to be induced, and, you know, can you come now? So basically, like, there was a lot of people giving birth that week, and so it wasn't guaranteed that we would be able to get in right at 6 o'clock, but we called. I'm getting ahead of myself. So basically, yes, she said, if we wait till your due date, there's a potential that she could be stillborn because she's not getting anything, or she's not getting enough from the placenta. And so I'm like, okay, you know, just taking it all in. Like, this is new to me. This has not even been a concern, like, this whole time. Why, like, it's literally down to the final hour. And I'm just now finding out about this. I guess maybe there were no other concerns. And I don't even know if there's anything I could have done differently. That's research I haven't even done. Here 5 weeks later, my daughter's about to be 6 weeks old. But anyways, so yeah, so she tells us that. She basically tells us you'll get Cervidil, and it kind of goes in like a tampon behind the cervix, and what it'll do is it'll soften the cervix to help it kind of start opening and dilating and all that jazz. And she said if that doesn't work, like, because the Cervidil goes in for 12 hours, and she said if after the 12 hours you're still not dilated enough, we'll do Pitocin. And, you know, if you know anything about Pitocin, then basically you'll be having a kid shortly after. So she tells us all this information. She says, you know, just let me know if you've got any questions, you know, maybe I'll see you at the hospital. So she gave me the paper. I'm looking at the paper as she walks out, and I'm just so thrown off. I'm caught off guard. And as we got closer to the due date, me and my husband both were starting to get a little bit more anxious because of the trauma from the last time we did this. And so I just burst into tears because I was terrified. Like, okay, my daughter is not as big as she should be. Okay, we need to induce you. I've heard horror stories about Pitocin. I never had heard of Cervidil, but Pitocin and just how that can make contractions worse. And I'm like, I don't need worse pain. I don't want to deal with that anymore or again. And then of course, like, the prospect of her potentially being stillborn, I'm like, what the freak? Like, I was just so caught off guard. My nerves were shot, and it was just not news we were expecting. And we were already on edge anyway. So, you know, got those tears out and just was like, all right, we got to do this. My husband, obviously, you know, he was there. Thankfully, he was there because it was not good news to hear. Obviously, I'm aware that it could have been worse, and I'm sure people have had worse prognoses, but for me, having had a flawless pregnancy before and pretty much a flawless pregnancy this time around, just the prospect of something going wrong was very, like, scary. And then the nurse, when we walked out, I guess she probably heard me crying. She was like, I'm sorry. And I'm just like, you know, good luck. And so that kind of made it worse because I'm like, okay, well, you know, this sucks too. So that was hard. So we go home, we get our bags. Thankfully, our son's godparents were already prepared to keep him for when we were going to deliver her. Hold on one second. You know, you got to check to make sure your kid's still breathing. It doesn't get better the more kids you have. You still be concerned. So we get home, bags are already packed. So his godmother ended up picking him up later on that evening, and we just kind of sat around the house. Yeah, we were just kind of shocked and unsure. And so we called my parents to let them know what was going on. And while I was explaining to them what was going on, I burst into tears again. Me and my husband were just a wreck because we were just so scared. Childbirth is scary. Even when everything goes right, childbirth is scary. And so, I mean, the unknown in general is scary. So we really were just scared. Like it just boils down to we were scared. Not only scared for my sake because I had passed out and lost a whole bunch of blood, but we were scared for our daughter. Like, what if I birth her and she's not alive? Like, that was a very real concern. Like, you get attached to this child growing inside of you, and for a child to not make it at any stage in the process, whether you're still pregnant or on the other, it doesn't matter. The loss of a child is devastating. And so just having to realize that could be a reality, you know, was very, very scary. So we ended up just laying down because we're not doing each other any good by just sitting around looking at each other. So we just laid down till 6 o'clock. So I had a timer set, called for labor and delivery. They didn't have any beds at that moment. She said call back around 10. So I'm like, okay, we'll just lay down till 10 o'clock and we'll just try to get some type of rest and relaxation until it's time to go. So they call us back around they call us back around 7:15 and say, hey, can you be here? Or when can you be here? I said, we can be there at 7:45. She said, all right, come at 8. Make sure you eat before you come. So we're like, all right, we're finna get this thing started, having no idea what to expect. So try to get something to eat, a couple places. It's 3 days before Christmas, so everyone's at a doggone drive-thru. So we eventually get something from Burger King and get to the hospital. So we're at the hospital, get checked in, and so labor and delivery nurses last time were our main nurse. She just was very inexperienced, and like when she would do my cervical checks, she was trash. I think there's a reference to that in my last video. But this nurse, she was way more experienced. The whole situation was just so much more calm because I wasn't in labor. So go in, get settled. Our nurse, super nice, really cool, got us settled, made us feel very comfortable, completely different. Total 180 from last time. So basically explains this is what's gonna happen, you know, and then whenever you go into labor, these are your options for pain management. Now, as you remember last time, I had a completely 100% natural birth. I was not playing those games with myself this time. I mentally couldn't handle the pain. I couldn't do it. I didn't even have the pain yet, but I just knew when it came, I wasn't gonna be able to handle it. So anyways, get settled in. Around 10 o'clock, I get the Cervidil. That sucked. Cervical anything sucks, okay? Like, our nurse could not get the Cervidil in. It's like this like triangular rectangle thing with a string on it. So they stick it behind your cervix. I've already explained what it does. And it just sits in there. So not only did I have, so the nurse, our actual nurse, she couldn't get it in. My body was tensed up. Nothing was getting up in there. So she had to go get another nurse with longer fingers, which I don't know if that didn't help. I mean, she got it up in there, thankfully. It sucked. I mean, sucked. That hurt so bad. It was so uncomfortable. That sucked. But she got it in there, and I'm like, I didn't even know she had got it up in there because my body was doing all types of lockdowns. So I'm like, thank you, Lord. And this whole time, I'm like, Lord, please don't let me have to do Pitocin. I've heard horror stories about Pitocin. I don't want to have to deal with no Pitocin. Please, Lord, like, let me just go into labor naturally. So she puts it in around 10. They're like, okay, in 12 hours, we'll take it out, see how much you're dilated. So, and then they also have the fetal monitor, and there was 2 things on me. Oh, the contraction thing to measure my contractions. Uncomfortable, sweaty, just weird. So yeah, we're set, you know, Cervidil's in, we're getting this process started. Cause actually when we got there around like maybe 8:15, 8:30. And I was like, all right, let's start this. You know, I was hoping by 9 o'clock they had that thing in there, but it was like 10:30. I'm like, Lord, see, now it's gonna be later. You know, you want to be able to control every element that you can. So it's like, I was trying to time everything and like, okay, if we get the Cervidil in this time, all that mental gymnastics. And so I was nervous, and when you're nervous and you're dealing with a scary situation, you be trying to control stuff that you ain't got no control over. So I was just like, Lord, here we are. And so we're chilling. I started having contractions either later that night or early that next morning. I don't remember the time. So we're at the hospital to be induced. We found out earlier today that it's best to go ahead and get baby girl out. So we're at the hospital. Been here going on 2 hours. Haven't done anything for the induction yet, so we're still waiting to get the Cervidil, which prayerfully that'll kickstart labor and I don't have to get Pitocin in the morning. Cervidil stays in there for 12 hours, so I'm like, y'all need to hurry and put this stuff in so we can get this party started. Definitely was not news we were hoping for or expecting, so earlier today was a little emotional. But now we're just kind of trusting the process and praying that everything goes well. Tired, ready to go to sleep, but I just gotta check my cervix and then actually put the Cervidil in there. So hopefully that'll happen in the next few minutes so I can get some sleep. Yeah, so that's the update. It's just a little bit before 10 p.m. on Wednesday, December 22nd. So, yep, we are just waiting. Hopefully she'll be here, sometime tomorrow. Hopefully, like, sooner than later. Prayerfully I won't tear, just won't have any complications, and the Lord will just redeem us from the last birth. It was kind of a disaster. Not the baby, he was fine. I just tore really bad and then passed out after surgery, so prayerfully this will go better. I felt that contraction. Anywho, that's that. Hubby's over here with me, and we're just gonna do this. So, Kendi Kai, we'll see you in a bit. So the next morning, I think by about 9 or 10 that morning, or maybe even 8. It was between 8 and 10. It was before the 12 hours was up. I know that much. So it was either 8 or 9 where they figured out that I had dilated to 3 centimeters. We had a new nurse. She was super nice, super cool. She checks my dilation and I'm 3 centimeters. And at this point I'm contracting. Like, I can feel the contractions. They had picked up and they felt very, very familiar because I just did this 13 months ago. So yeah, I feel the contractions, and my husband hates seeing me in pain. So he's like, babe, you want the epidural? You ready for the epidural? No, babe, I'm good. Like, literally every time I would have a contraction, he's like, you ready for the epidural? So finally got to the point where he said, are you ready for the epidural? I said, yes, I'm ready for the epidural. So we had already done the paperwork for that, talked to the person, anesthesiologist, whatever the doctor is called that does the epidural. And, we had already gone through that whole process. So I'm thinking, I've heard horror stories of people wanting an epidural and it taking forever. And then by the time the epidural person comes, they've had the baby. Thankfully, it was like 5 minutes before they were in there. And it was like, I think a resident, and then not the actual doctor, the resident who is a doctor, and the, I guess, veteran doctor and the nurse. So they get the epidural put in, and people make it seem like if you have a contraction during an epidural, you can't move and you got to fight through it. No, they stop, like, doing whatever they're doing whenever you're about to have a contraction, thankfully. Because, got to breathe and all that. You can't stay perfectly still. The whole process was about 15-20 minutes, and it was not as bad as people make it seem. So don't let people scare y'all. If you want to do something, just try it. because there's only so much advice about anything that you can get before you just gotta do it yourself. And I was willing to put up with whatever to get that epidural, so I wouldn't have to deal with contractions. So it didn't matter what the process was. And my nurse and my husband were coaching me through that, because them contractions, man, you would think that after you have one baby, the contractions kind of wane off a little bit. No, that thing hurt every single time. Like, your body is like caving in on itself in one spot for however long contractions last. You know, I was between 3 and 4 centimeters at that point. So I'm like, good. Thank you, Jesus. I did not have to get the Pitocin. You answered that prayer, Lord. I know you're going to carry me through the rest of this process. Let me check on my daughter again. So yes, got the epidural in. I'm like, Lord, help this thing kick in. Because like once they get it in, it still has to actually start working. So it wasn't working yet. And they have like this button where if the pain relief isn't sufficient, you could press this button and it'll add more medication. And I only ended up needing to do it one time. But once they first put it in, there's like a 20-minute waiting period or 30-minute waiting period before it will allow the medicine to dispense again. And I was like, out of all the times I need another dose, it ain't gonna work, because it hadn't been however long it was supposed to be. So yeah, we're just chilling. Contractions, we can see on the monitor my contractions. I could feel some of it, like some of the pressure, and then what happened was I could feel it more on my right side than my left side. And apparently epidurals are gravity based, so I just flipped over to my right side, and it kind of, I guess the medicine trickled over to that side. And so yeah, we're just waiting basically for more dilation. Thankfully, I couldn't feel whenever they would do cervical checks, because, you know, the epidural had kicked in. I was numb pretty much from, I guess, waist down. At some point, I get to 10 centimeters. So my doctor, she was on call that morning, and it has to be maybe like around 11, I don't know. I can feel more pressure. So even though it doesn't hurt, I can still feel pressure. So I'm realizing that this is getting closer, and, you know, I'm like 9 centimeters dilated. I believe that I started pushing around like 120. So doctor was doing something with some other mom. I don't know if it was C-section or some type of procedure. So the nurse was like, as soon as Dr. done, she's gonna come in, because you're complete, meaning you've reached 10 centimeters dilated. Thank the Lord in heaven, because even though I don't know how this pushing process is gonna go, I know that I'm at least at the finish line. I just gotta literally push past the finish line. So Dr. comes in, you know, this is her second year. She didn't deliver my son, but, you know, she's been my doctor this whole time. She's actually gonna deliver my daughter. So she comes in, you know, she said, all right, I'm gonna go get dressed, and we're gonna come in and we're gonna get this done. So I start getting nervous again. My husband starts getting nervous again, because this is where things went haywire, or the start of how things went haywire the first time. So I had intended to make a playlist. I actually started making a playlist because last time I didn't use one because things were a mess when we got to the hospital. And so my sister had sent me both my sisters had sent me a playlist, and I ended up using my sister's. That doesn't make sense, but if you know me, then you know who that is and how that makes sense. So my sister, I just said, babe, go to my phone, go to my Hangouts, and get my sister's playlist. I need you to pull it up, because I didn't make one, but I knew I needed the Lord in heaven to help me through this, because last time I had been in labor for 15 hours when we got to the hospital, so my mind was shot. This time, because I was not in labor when we went to the hospital, my labor progressed. Even though it progressed more quickly, it progressed like more gradual. I don't know how to make that make sense. I was clear. I had clarity of mind. I was aware. I was present. And the last time, by the time I had finally got to the place where I could push, I was just like not all the way there, because I was just so tired. But this time I was hydrated. I had eaten. I had been able to sleep throughout the night. So I was way more aware. I was way more present. I could hear everything. I could feel everything. I was just there. And so that, in a sense, was more scary, because I know that I'm gonna be present for every doggone push I'm finna do. And so I had my husband pull up the playlist, and I didn't know what was on the playlist. I just said, just pick a song and let's start off. So he puts the music on, the nurses and the doctor come in, they get me laid back, get the, everything ready for me to push, get me in position, all of that. They explain to me, all right, you're gonna hold your legs, we're gonna hold your feet, you're gonna push for like 3 cycles of 10, hold your breath, the whole spiel. Oh, Lord, I can't remember it like it was yesterday. It was 1 something, and I start pushing. And I'm terrified that I'm gonna tear again, but we're here. We gotta get this baby out. Start pushing. I start getting lightheaded. I'm like, I'm getting lightheaded. I'm just like freaking out, y'all. It's laughable now, but you're literally holding your breath when you push with all of your might. And so push, however many, I don't know how many times I pushed this time, but I pushed a few times, nothing. And I can't feel anything. So they're like, oh, that was a good one. Do it again. And I'm like, y'all, is there actually progress being made here? Because I didn't feel her coming, well, not yet. I didn't feel her coming out. Like, I didn't feel anything. So I'm like, y'all are just encouraging me for no reason, because y'all are lying to me. There's nothing happening. Like, I'm just pushing for no reason. Like, I didn't feel that my pushes were effective, producing anything. So, my husband, he's encouraging me, and I see him trying to like mouth to the doctor, like, is she tearing? And I'm like, don't do that, because I'm much more aware now. I can hear, I'm observing everything. Whereas last time he could have been giving away my doggone social security number and I wouldn't know. But I was like, please don't do that, because I didn't want to focus. That was going to make me scared to push. I was like, you know what, fine then, I ain't going to push. This baby's going to stay here forever. If there's a risk of me tearing again, then I'm not doing it. She's just going to have to be in my body, because I don't want to tear. So I didn't want to hear her answer and then it make me not want to push. So he's like, okay, I'm going to ask. So I'm like, are you doing anything to prevent a tear? Like, she had warm compresses, she was massaging the perineum, like she was doing whatever she could do to prevent a tear, because that was how we got where we got last time with the blood loss and the passing out. Ugh. So she was doing everything she could to make sure that my skin was stretched and that I would not tear. So keep pushing. They're like, okay, we can see her head. She got a head full of hair. I'm like, oh, yay. So keep pushing. And I can feel I feel her head? Did I feel her head? I think I didn't feel her head, but like I could feel her head. I think. I don't remember, honestly. I think I could feel her head coming out. So like, okay, just, we need a couple more of those good pushes and all that. So I finally push, and this girl just slides out. Thank God she did. Because at mom's ultrasound, it said that she was going to be 6 pounds, 9 ounces. But she actually ended up being 5 pounds, 14 ounces. I still did tear. I had a 2nd-degree tear, but nothing as bad as last time. She was actually able to repair my tear right there. And since I had the epidural, didn't have to do the whole lidocaine and all that craziness. Like the first time. Review the last video. So yeah, she just comes out. Oh, let me stop. Okay. While they're setting up, we had like ice chips and like a bowl of cereal on the little table. The cereal gets knocked over everywhere. We'll deal with that later. The water gets knocked over. And at the time, the song Oceans is playing, one of my favorite songs. And her middle name, well, okay, not her middle name. It was originally gonna be her middle name, but her name is Kendi Kai. So Kendi means the loved one. It's like an African name. Kai, I think, is a Hawaiian name, and it means ocean. So the song Oceans is playing, and then her middle name, the second part of her first name means ocean. I missed a very important part. Before I start pushing, the music is playing, and I just start crying. And I'm just so keyed into the moment. I can just feel God's presence. And I just was overcome with thankfulness that Jesus died for me. And it was just such a, I don't want to say beautiful moment. It was just such a moment of gratitude. And like, Lord, no matter how this goes, I'm just thankful that you died for me and you came into my life and I've accepted you and I'm going to spend eternity with you. Like, I was just overcome with that assurance. And like, my husband was like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm not crying because of this. I'm crying because of the song. What song was playing? I have to look up and see what song was playing. Maybe once I figure it out, I'll put it like down here. But I was just so overcome with like just thankfulness and like Jesus really loves me. Like, he really died for me and I'm really gonna spend my eternity. Like, I was just overcome with that. And I guess whenever you're doing something difficult like that, perspective comes in at a completely different level of focus. Like, that was what I was focusing on. Like, Lord, not only are you going to get me through this, but you're going to see me through this, through my child's life, the ups and downs. Like, it was just all of this flooding and I was just so overcome. And so, like I said, the Ocean song was playing when my daughter actually came. Actually, I just told my husband to keep playing that song because it went to some other song I didn't know. And I was like, I ain't got time to be trying to listen to lyrics while I'm trying to put, like, I want to listen to a song I know. And that brings me comfort. That brings me peace. And so he just kept playing that song. Shout out to him for holding my foot and being the DJ and encouraging me and staying strong because we was both real weak emotionally and mentally. So yeah, she came out, slid out, and I just started crying. Like, I was crying before, but I just started crying because it was just like, first of all, thank the Lord this process is over. But also, she's crying, so she's alive, you know, she's healthy. Seeing her was a lot different than my son because even though she cried, she was a lot quieter than my son. Just like calm, not like quiet so she wasn't breathing or crying, but she was just calm. Her eyes weren't open. Like, when my son came out, his eyes were open. You know, like, he was ready to start life. He was looking around, like, the whole thing, but she was just like, I'm just gonna slide in, you know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to cause no ruckus. My son was causing all the ruckus. I don't know, I was just so emotional. And I think it also had to do with the fact that I was more present, I was more aware. But I was just like, thank you, Lord. Like, thank you, Jesus. Like, I don't know, if you've ever given birth, you may know what I'm talking about. But it was just like the most beautiful moment. I'm so glad that God redeemed us during this birth, because that first one had me like, I'm not ever having no kids ever again. And even after I had this one, I was like, I might have a C-section the next time if I get pregnant again, because it's just a lot. Even the epidural, like, it's just a lot. Like, cervical checks are, other than like labor pains, those cervical checks suck. And I understand it's a means to an end, but maybe it's not as bad for everybody, but I just hate them. And another thing, I feel like maybe I was just, my senses were more heightened of pain. But sometimes I feel, and this isn't against that hospital, this isn't against my nurses, but it just feels like they're not as gentle as they could be. Like with the IV and like the cervical checks, like I can't say that part enough. And I guess certain parts just aren't going to be comfortable, but I feel like nurses in labor and delivery should try harder to be gentle. I understand that these things are going to be uncomfortable and they're going to hurt, and you know, pain is just part of it, but I feel like they could try harder to just be more gentle with everything, the whole thing. Just be more gentle. Have your hands warm, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you got to touch on somebody, doctors and everybody, like in any doctor's office, for any reason that you're there, like, they wash their hands real quick with that cold water and then touch on you. I'm like, can we use warm water? Like, there's just so many other different things that could be done to make the process more comfortable. So they weigh her, check her height, her weight, all the stuff. And I was able to do the golden hour this time, skin to skin. She latched, get the breastfeeding going. That part, I really wish I had been able to do with my son, but I mean, we did it as much as we could, but I had to go to surgery. But I did that, and homegirl would be on there for an hour at a time, which I was fine with because I'm like, this is gonna really kickstart my milk coming in. But that girl, she was getting every drop of colostrum she could. And I felt more confident that I didn't need to supplement with formula. So like in the hospital with my son, his pee diapers had like these crystals in it, which meant he wasn't getting enough liquid. So we ended up giving him 2 bottles of formula the whole time we were in the hospital. And so with her, I was like, you know what? No, we're gonna this colostrum is enough. She's gonna get everything that she needs from this. So I'm thankful that having done it before, I was more confident in myself, that I knew what I was doing, one, and that my body could give my daughter what she needed. So the girl would poop around the clock, all the little tar, the meconium came out. Actually, we were able to go to the maternity ward from labor and delivery. I think it was the same day. I was very uncomfortable. I was extremely swollen. So walking around sucked. And actually like feeling the swelling was mind blowing. I was like, eesh. Not fun, not cute. Not as nervous about eating and having my first poop because I knew what to expect. It's funny because our labor and delivery experience was better, but our maternity ward experience was worse. Ugh. We had a traveling nurse, so she wasn't even like aware that we were coming. And she also, because she was a traveling nurse, she had only been there for like a week, so she wasn't keyed into the system to get me my medication because I was in pain. That epidural was wearing off because I had to be able to get up and walk before we even went to the maternity ward. So I was in pain because I hadn't had anything since the epidural, so I needed something, and she wasn't able to get it in a timely manner. But eventually she got my pain meds, my stool softener. But that, yeah, it was real disorganized whenever we had her. The next day, the nurse actually worked at the hospital, was an employee of that hospital, so she knew better what she was doing. I expressed my concerns because one thing I'm going to do is express my concerns when it has to do with my health and my children's health. And if it was my husband, the same thing. You know, she got us right. We didn't get sent home with as much goodies as we did the first time. And also, we didn't have as many tests being done because we were moved over sooner, and they don't start all that stuff until your child is 24 hours old. I didn't know that because I had no reason to know that. We didn't have bilirubin/jaundice checks. There was no concern for that with her. So yeah, the lactation consultant didn't come. I didn't really need her. Thought I did, but I figured it out. The hospital actually had a bed this time because it was new whenever we went last year, but it had been a year and some change. So my husband actually had a bed to sleep in. Basically, yeah, we had a better time this time. We came home on Christmas Eve. So she was born on December 23rd at 1:57 in the afternoon. She was 5 pounds, 14 ounces, 20 inches long. I think she scored an 8 at first on her APGAR and then a 9. Oh, there was this lady that came in and took pictures. Don't like the pictures, won't be ordering those. But it was cool, you know, to have those first moments. Well, it was once we got in the maternity ward, so maybe she was like a day old. We didn't do that the first time. We came home Christmas Eve around, I think got discharged around like 4:15, and we actually had to hurry to Walgreens because my prescription for my pain medication, and I was like, I don't have time to not have pain medication. So we like rushed to Walgreens because they closed at 5 because it was Christmas Eve. So we hurried up and got that, came home, and we were home. I honestly don't remember how the first few nights were. Were we upstairs or down? No, I was downstairs in our bedroom down here with her. She breastfed around the clock constantly, which was great because my milk actually came in within 2 days. Normally it takes like 3 to 4, but I don't know if it's because my body had done it already or because I was just more diligent about having her latched. It came in and, you know, she was doing great. And so now, you know, she's 5 weeks old. She's over 9 pounds. She's great, healthy. She has the cutest cry and her lips go down. It's so sad. But sleeping, you know, homegirl still has her days and nights mixed up a little bit. She loves being held. She likes that body heat. Adjusting to life with 2 kids is something else. My son is with his dad more because obviously I have her. but I can tell he misses me in the sense of like, not that I was his primary, like we both were primary, like we're both primary, but I've taken a step back because I have to tend to her, you know, breastfeeding and all of that. And she just is more comforted by me because she lived inside of me for 40 weeks almost. And so she's more familiar with my heartbeat, my scent and all that. And she can smell my milk. So it's more difficult to be at my son's beck and call because I have to have her. When he first met her, he was excited. He hit her on the head. He was trying to like pat her, but he's one. He doesn't know what gentle means. And at first, when he actually was back home with us, because he met her on Christmas Day, but he didn't stay with us. He didn't come back until like the next Monday, the day after her due date, actually, the 27th or the 30th. What kind of math is that? The 27th or the 28th, he came back. I think. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. So at first he was kind of like, girl, what you got going on? Who is that? What is that? What are you doing? I need you. But now he seems to prefer his dad because he spends more time with him just out of necessity. And I mean, they're best friends. Like, they're so cute. But I can tell, like, the other day I got him ready for school, which normally his dad does that. But he had either one of them were a wreck that night. And so I just like, let me help my husband. And I could just tell he was so excited for me to be getting him ready. And it was heartbreaking, but heartwarming all at the same time. Because it's like, dang, like my son can tell a difference. Like he can tell that this isn't normal, that for me to be getting him ready because his dad always does it. But also like he misses me and he is excited and all that. So, it'll equal out. But just those first few weeks and even still now, it's difficult to be a primary for both children. So thankfully, having a spouse who's not only physically there, but mentally, and emotionally there for all of us is a huge, huge help. I don't know how people do it with just one person. And our first night back upstairs, so me and Kendi Kai were downstairs for like a week and some change. When we moved back upstairs, our children hazed us to no end. Our son was tripping, she was tripping, like they was not trying to sleep that night. So that was hard the first night. It has gotten continuously better, but they have their moments, they're children. So, we're making it, we're figuring things out. And that's it, that's the birth story. Still tore, but not as bad. Got repaired. The poops were great, thankfully, not that you asked, but this is my birth story. I've been able to, after having 2 birth experiences, I've been able to kind of give some other budding mothers or mothers who are either newly a mom or about to be some advice about what to do when you get home. That postpartum care is essential. Take your pain medication if you need it. Don't be trying to be all superhuman. Now, the first time I didn't always take a full dose or any medication because I wanted to be able to feel where my pain was. That way I would know if I was sitting wrong or walking wrong or whatever. I wanted to know if I was causing more damage or any damage at all. But it was strictly to know where the pain was and if I was contributing to any type of injury. This time around, I wasn't on that strong medication. I asked, but they were like, girl, you fine. So I think they had me on naproxen this time. Take your stool softeners on time, every time. Even if you have a couple good poops, like, you never know when things can go haywire. I would rather, for that process, like for that stage of the healing process, I would rather have loose stools than hard ones. So take your stool softeners if you're fresh out. I'm hoping that I don't get postpartum hair loss. My hair has grown back in since the last time, but I lost my edges last time. So I'm praying that this postnatal vitamin will help me not lose my hair. Who knows? We'll see. Eat. I don't know. Just take care of yourself. If you have help, this time I had people cook for us, so I didn't have that type of help the first time around. But this time I was like, I need someone cooking me a meal every week. We prearranged that, and that was great. So yeah, it's been great. Yeah, 2 kids is a lot, but obviously it's doable. People do it all the time with more kids. And the experience was much better. It had its worst moments and it had its better moments. I think the worst moments were just because I was more aware of what was happening. So I felt the pain of certain things more than I did, either because it didn't happen or because I was just more aware. Like the Cervidil getting put in, that was terrible. 0 out of 0 stars. Do not recommend. I'm thankful that my daughter was okay and that she's still okay. One thing I will say, I don't know, I don't want to be giving like unsolicited medical advice, and you should always put anything like this, you know, in front of a doctor or someone who's certified and qualified. But if you don't have to be induced, don't do it. Your body knows when it's time. And even if you don't know what you're doing, your body does. So, I mean, thankfully there is a mechanism to start labor if your child is in potential danger, and I'm thankful for that. But if I had gone into labor naturally, like that was the plan, to just go into labor naturally and deliver her as naturally as possible, I was probably still gonna get that epidural, but you know, I wasn't gonna be induced. I know some people either choose to be induced, or like in my case, I had to be. Technically, I mean, I guess I could have just waited to see what was gonna happen, but that wasn't a gamble I was willing to take. So, you know, with the advisement of my doctor, you know, that's what we did. And I was glad she actually was able to deliver our daughter, because it was cool to kind of see a full circle moment. I'm gonna pray that I don't get pregnant again for a couple years. I need a break. My body needs a break. Gotta get these babies up and potty trained. But, you know, God really blessed us, and he really came through. And he healed us. I truly believe that this birth served to heal us from our traumatic experience the first time. So anyways, as usual, as before, if you've got any questions or you know, anything, I'm open book. If you've got anyone in your life who's ever given birth, give them a high five, because that junk is not easy. It is not easy. It's not easy. Even in the most beautiful moments of not only motherhood but childbirth, it is not easy. It's worth it. It's worth it. These beautiful children are worth it. And they get older and they throw tantrums, but they're so cute, and just seeing the world through their eyes is worth it. And being able to share with them the gospel that Jesus came to this earth and he bore our sins because we're unworthy. We're lost without him, and looking forward to being able to tell my children that Jesus died for them and he loves them. And, you know, if they would just turn to him, repent, and accept him into their lives, you know, that they'll spend eternity with him. There's nothing more worthwhile. And because I made that decision, I was able to reflect on that as I had my daughter. And that's not anything I expected to reflect. It was beautiful because it was so random. Like the Lord just brought my mind to the fact that he was there for me, not only in that moment, but he was there for me 2,000 years ago. Like, crazy. It was just so beautiful. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to share the gospel with my children, the gospel of Jesus and how he came to this earth and he bore our sins and he died and he was buried and he rose again for my sins to redeem me back to God. And God redeemed us and our childbirthing traumas through this childbirth. It's just his hand is in everything. Thank you for watching my birth story number 2. But I just wanted to share that because it was so different from our first experience. There were, you know, the whole induction thing and scary, but God brought us through it. And we're here. We have a beautiful daughter to show for it. Thanks for watching.